Yes, it is I, Tantus Naraban Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Well, where we left off, we were talking about supporting characters. Let's finish up with supporting characters today, and then we have a little bit more information that I want to handle with the special campaign settings, basically, campaign modules. But with the supporting characters, let's talk children. You might encounter children. These are anybody from basically being an infant to about 11, 12. Children will have statistics much like a player, like any other supporting character. Now, they will not have a class yet, so they're not going to have a heroic class yet. They will have ability scores, but they will have penalties from the base ability scores you're going to be using for all your normal supporting characters, according to the fact that they're children. Things like loss of strength are very important here. If you're looking at actual hit points that you're going to have for them, they have a D4 plus their con modifier. They have no action points, no reputation, no defensive modifier, no saving throw modifier, no base attack bonus, no skills, no feats, no occupation. So you can see there isn't a lot to being a child. You get some hit dice, you get the fact that you're alive, and you call it a day. And the fact is, they're like this until they would hit the ripe old age of 12, in which time they're considered a young adult, and they take their first level of a heroic class, and begin down that life cycle of everyone that gets heroic classes and becomes characters in your world. Also important to note, they have a speed of 20, if you really want them moving around. Now let's talk about those ordinary characters a little bit for a second. So if you happen to run into an ordinary character that you have to basically defeat, they will have a CR. Congratulations, they do. They have a CR equal to their heroic class level, -1. So if they're level 1, they're CR 1/2. It is very important to note that children, they have a CR of 0. You get nothing for defeating a child. Ever. It's not worth it. Don't do it. Now, supporting characters are not just statistics. They have their own quirks, their own beliefs, their own wants, everything that makes them effectively people. It is up to your game master to make them feel alive. It's up to your game master to develop them in such a way that they make you feel like there's something important. Your GM will, of course, develop all these things and usually add in like a trait or two that will make them feel like they're unique and memorable. That your characters, especially if a reoccurring character is arriving, your players will remember them. Now, this isn't to say that every one of the bit characters or every one of the people out there is supposed to be memorable. No, it's just these ones that are going to be the major interaction points with your players should be the ones that will stick out more, and your players may remember them more. Now, as I said, usually you're going to choose a couple of traits that will stick out, which could be physical traits, mental traits, something about them that makes them unique. The book provides a list of 100, which you can roll on or choose from. This is important note. This isn't the only traits you could use. You could come up with traits on your own. This is an example of 100 that could be used and accessed by your characters. Basically, 100 you could choose for your characters. Now, most of these, generally speaking, all of them, have no effect on your character statistics. Because he's bald, it doesn't do anything else special to it. But your game master may want to include slight trait alterations, basically statistical alterations based on some of these traits. That's an option your game master has depending on certain ones of them to make it feel more unique. Another option is that certain ones of these traits explain exceptionally low ability scores or exceptionally high ability scores for this NPC. Basically give an excuse as to why these various stats there. It kind of matches with it. If they've got hideous scar over their face, maybe that's why they have a very low charisma, because they scare people away with their hideous scar. Now, the book lists a number of basic archetypes that you can use for these supporting characters. These archetypes are basically multi-classing. They're combinations of 2 of the various basic heroic classes, the 6 heroic classes. The object of this is to come up with basic concepts for certain types of supporting characters. It will list occupations and roles and professions that will link to each of these basic archetypes. The important thing here to note is this doesn't cover everything. There are plenty of archetypes, archetypes of characters out there, professions, basic things like that, that do not fit within these archetypes, that you would have to figure out where they would fit along. Also, it might list a certain occupation with a certain archetype. Because of the nature of the modern world and having lots of different types of people, you could actually choose a separate archetype entirely. It might say that there's the tough, smart hero archetype matches this one type of occupation, and you think to yourself, well, I really don't think that archetype fits with the character I'm building. This one over here does. Go ahead and do it. You can put them wherever you really want. It's dependent on what kind of characters you're building and the world you're building. It will add a little bit of extra to say that, oh, people are going to assume that this job, maybe like a lawyer, is going to act this way. And he's over here with these heroic classes, basically as a basis for himself. And that's what makes him unique and different. Now, this isn't to say that you're not going to encounter heroic type supporting characters. These are going to be the allies and antagonists that your players will face. If you do, they will have a CR equal to their heroic level. Basically, they're going to be treated just the same as a player almost. They're going to have a lot of the same statistics as a player. Now let's move on and begin to talk about the adventure modules. There are 3 campaign models that are provided in the book that each add basically a supernatural or magic element to them to allow you to integrate them into the game. These modules, you can either use them straight as a whole in your games or adapt them as you feel is necessary. These are really examples to spur you on, to spur on your imagination, and for you to use as you see fit. You don't have to use any of these. These are just 3 examples of ways to bring in supernatural elements into your system that are very logical and work good and work well. So if you're looking for supernatural horror in your games, the Shadow Chasers are a perfect place for bringing in elements of supernatural horror to your games. If you're looking for psychic powers and things of the mind, then the Agents of Psi are going to work very well for you. If you're looking for contemporary fantasy, then the Arcana is good for you. You will look each of these over. Just go ahead, take a look at them, get an idea of what they do. Each one will give reasons that your characters might be involved with them, motivations for characters, campaign, basically information, traits, settings, things of all this nature that allow you to easily integrate them into your world or to adapt them to whatever you want to. It gives a lot of basic information for using these types of games and playing in these types of worlds, basically using these modules. These are not required, these are only examples, but they are good examples. Theoretically, you could integrate all 3 if you really wanted to. The fact is, each of them also introduces their own advanced classes that are unique to them, that basically allow some of your players to gain their supernatural type of powers. Ones that fit within the Shadow Chaser, fit with each of their worlds. Basically, supernatural powers along each of those lines. And again, you could integrate all 3 of them into some kind of quagmire, and as long as you think you can balance it, it would work. But again, up to you how you want to handle all of this. But that's it for today. So, I first started out by finishing talking about supporting characters. I talked about children, I talked about adding personality to your supporting characters, and I talked about the supporting character archetypes, which are listed in the book, which you can use to easily throw together a supporting character right then and there. You're ready to use them. Bam. Easy peasy. Works really fine. Then I moved into talking about the adventure modules. 3 types of campaign modules you could use to basically make your world more supernatural, and ways that you could adapt them into a modern world. They're very useful if you want to use supernatural elements and have supernatural creatures out there. This is a good way of figuring out how to integrate them and how to bring it into your world very quickly and efficiently. It's up to you if you want to use this directly, to adapt them, whatever. These are open-ended. They're just suggestions. That's all they are. Suggestions, which you can use however you like. In the next episode, though, we are going to dive into the final section of this book. Really, we're going to talk about FX abilities. All those psychic, supernatural, fantasy elements that we just sort of mentioned really briefly just a minute ago. How they work, what they work with, how you're going to use a lot of these things, from spells to psychic powers to magic items. We're going to go over all of them. And it will take a couple of episodes, but we're going to do our best to dive into this section of the less than realistic powers that could happen in your D20 Modern games. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please just leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. Helps to grow and improve the channel and the empire. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.